All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, we'll do our first of a couple mini lectures. So this is my first time pre-recording, so give me some leeway here. But the first thing I want to do is get started in talking about the academic writing project. If you chimed into the Zoom chat last evening, I briefly talked about it, but now I'm going to show you guys the assignment sheet, which I will upload to D2L, and then I will do a mini lecture on coming up with a topic, research question, and a thesis statement. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll just go over the details with it. And if you have any follow-up questions or emails, any follow-up questions, just email it to me. All right, so here it is. I believe you guys can see the screen I see. So the academic writing project, essentially what I'm asking you guys to do is do a brief research paper. So you will write a research essay of 5 pages pertaining to your own topic of interest as it pertains to your own track. I might have to edit that, it's a little wordy. For creative writing, literature, education, theater, journalism, and of course, if you're an English minor, then you can write about whatever interests you in your own major. The essay should include the following: a clear introduction that establishes your topic. The introduction should also contain the thesis. The body of your paper should offer supporting claims that back up your thesis. I'll get to that later. Each paragraph should have a topic sentence, transitions within and between paragraphs, quotation summaries and paraphrases are introduced with a signal phrase. Quotation summaries and paraphrases are analyzed or interpreted. A formatting style such as APA or MLA for document design and citing. Parenthetical citations. It should include 5 to 7 sources as a rule of thumb. You should always use at least 1 source per page. So I would want to see you guys go less than that. And 2 of the sources must be from a peer-reviewed journal article or academic book. The academic book requirement is obviously not feasible right now because you guys can't get to the library. But I would like to see you guys use peer-reviewed journal articles and things you'd find off the internet. If you beckon back to our library unit, then you should know how to find these things electronically. Your paper should also include a conclusion and an APA or MLA works cited page. Some of these things on here might seem foreign to you, but in the next 2 weeks, I'll go over all of it to ensure you guys know how to effectively write an academic essay. In conjunction with your research-based essay, you must include a working outline. So I want to see your process and how you organize that. And then the evaluation criteria is simple. Do you do it? Does the writer complete the task? Is the essay concise and grammatical? So that means that it's going to be proofread. You're going to conference with me. You might even do an optional peer review with one of your peers through Zoom. And is the implemented research relevant and credible? So if you're coming from like jimsreefer.blogspot.com compared to getting something off of EBSCOhost, I'll be looking into that. All the resources are here. I will upload these to D2L in the next 2 weeks. And then you can see the due dates. On the 12th, the proposal was due on the D2L forum. That'll double as your forum post for the week. And essentially all I'm going to ask you guys to do is write about 3 paragraphs outlining what first what your research question is, what your thesis is, and then what you propose to do in your paper. So you're not actually writing the paper in and of itself, but you're proposing what you think you want to do, what you think you might discover in writing that paper. And you can do it about anything you want. And then on the 12th, we will also have a Zoom chat. We're also going to encourage people to do show and tell. So if you come into that, you can bring like your favorite thing. On the 15th, you can submit early a half draft of your essay. And if you do that, I'll give you 5 points, 5 bonus points. I know a lot of you have emailed me about how to beef up your grades, and this is just one way to do it. On the 19th, the academic writing project will be due on D2L at 11:59 p.m. I'll open up a Dropbox for that. And then you may also conference with me on Zoom at any point in your process. Any student that takes advantage of this opportunity will earn 3 bonus points. Again, people are looking for a bonus. And then I've also included another sheet, and I'll upload this all to D2L so you don't have to write anything down, is that the paper should be at least 5 pages. It should include at least 5 to 7 sources. And I say it should not be all web sources. Well, you kind of don't have a choice. Unless you have an academic library in your house, you have to get everything electronically. But it's still possible to do. You'd be surprised what you can get with the, not IUPs, but CalU's EBSCOhost. And then you have to use MLA-APA, works cited, cite things parenthetically. If you're not sure about citing it, just cite it. And then there's a couple other helpful hints. And then I'll also give you 3 bonus points if you virtually take your paper to the Writing Center. And again, that's just more opportunities to beef up your grade if you're unsure about how to do that. Or, excuse me, if you're unsure about how to go about getting more points. All right. All right, so there may have been a little gap in there. I wasn't quite sure how to pause the recording. But now we're going to start talking about your academic writing project. And the first thing you guys need to do is, if you've taken freshman composition or research writing, you guys very clearly know that you have to brainstorm. I'm not going to go over brainstorming tactics because they're very simple. You can make lists, things like that, but we won't do that. But what I want you guys to do is pause the video for about 5 to 7 minutes and take a few minutes to free write about what interests you and what you want to learn about it. So when you're thinking about this topic, it should pertain to your area of interest. So if you're a literature major, what author interests you? What text interests you? If you're journalism, are there things in the media or communications, especially now with the coronavirus pandemic, that interest you? You can write about them. If you're in theater, maybe you want to explore a play or a playwright, certain lighting techniques, whatever. And I know for our one biology guy, you have free reign of it because I don't know too much about the science. So what I want you guys to do for the next 5 to 7 minutes, you can set a timer on your phone, or you can just wing it and just free write about some of the potential topics that interest you as it pertains to your own major and track. All right, so now after you've brainstormed a topic, usually what I would do in class is I'd be like, all right, what did you write about? What did you brainstorm? But I have a workaround for that, so just bear with me. But I think now that you have potentially conceived a topic that interests you, it might be a good idea to think about the scope of your topic. So I'm only asking you guys to write a 5-page research paper. So you're not going to say, well, I'm very interested in African-American literature, so I'm going to write a 5-page paper on African-American literature. It just doesn't seem feasible to do something at that length because you can make a career on that rather than just write a 5-page paper. It also might be hard to write a single paper on an author because the author may have written multiple novels or short stories. And it might for 5 pages, even be difficult to write about one work from an author. But what you can do is you can focus on something very, very specific, and then you can write about that in 5 pages, no more, no less. But in order to do that, I think it's important to do 2 things. The first thing you guys need to do is make a research question, and then the next thing you do is you convert the research question into a thesis. So I'm going to share my screen again, and then I'll show you guys a couple things that I'll upload to D2L for everyone. Let's see here. Technology. Hold on a second. I'm getting confused. All right, so I think I found it. Please bear with me. This is the first time I've ever recorded a lecture online. Not my strength, but we will persist. So now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go to here. And I'm going to upload this scan to D2L, but it has some very good points about drafting and revising a working thesis statement. So I'll just go ahead and read through it here. It says, for many types of writing, you will be able to state your central idea in a sentence or two. Such a statement, which ordinarily appears in the opening paragraph of your finished essay, is called a thesis. I assume you guys know this already, but it's always good to get a reminder. And also, excuse, I'm in my garage, so if you hear motorcycles and people cutting grass, I just want to be outside. So understanding what makes an effective thesis statement. An effective thesis statement is a central idea that conveys your purpose, your reason for writing, and requires support. And I always have a funny joke about anything that requires support, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But keep the following guidelines in mind to help you develop an effective thesis statement. A thesis statement should take a position that needs to be explained and supported. We call it backing that thing up. A thesis should be your answer to a question, your solution to a problem, or your position on a topic or debate. But before you get into having a thesis statement, it's always a great idea to start off with a question. And we call that a research question. And I'll go over that in a minute. But a thesis should be appropriate for the length requirements of the assignment. It should not be too broad or too narrow. So as I had said earlier, you don't want to say that like, British literature is in a state of flux. Well, if that's your thesis, it's first of all, it's general, but two, you're writing a paper in 5 pages about British literature. It just can't be done. Or if you're saying that the media coverage in the liberal media and its depiction of coronavirus numbers is extremely skewed, again, that might be too general, might be too narrow, but you have to think about that when you're doing it. And more often than not, when you write your paper, you usually end up tailoring your thesis after the fact. So a lot of times you come up with a working thesis statement, but it's always good to give yourself a roadmap. So with that being said, a thesis should be sharply focused. Use concrete language and make sure your thesis lets readers know what you plan to discuss. So if you come up with a thesis statement that says, I want to explore the relationship of free verse poetry in some author's text, then you write about like spaceships, they don't correlate. So you have to make sure your thesis, the topic of your paper corresponds with your thesis statement. And it can't even be tangential. If your thesis says, I'm going to talk about how people read news on a cell phone, and then your paper's about how people read news on their computers, they don't correlate. So you have to make sure that they align. All right, so I'll stop that share for a minute. All right, so now we'll just do a brief activity on coming up with a research question and showing you guys how you convert a research question into a thesis statement. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to look at Microsoft Word here. I hope this is the right one. There it is right here. I'm learning. All right, so a research question. And I'll just type this in for you guys, and then I can share this document on D2L if you would like. So with the research question, and you're thinking about what people riding their motorcycles, what do you want to argue? What do you want to learn? What do you want to prove? So let me format this, make it a little bit smaller. This is my new whiteboard, so are the times. And you can ask very, very general questions, very broad questions, and just think about some sort of topic that interests you, and then just ask a question about it. So I tried to make this as timely as I possibly could. So we could ask a question such as, should Americans employ social distancing during the COVID-19 pandemic? So that is a researchable question. It's not a fact. So when you're coming up with this sort of thesis statement, you want to avoid stating a fact, because if you come up and you just simply say Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president, you can't really substantiate that. That's just a simple fact. But if you come up with some sort of question that you can argue, that you can research, that you can almost prove, then you have a more working thesis statement. And I think a question like, should Americans employ social distancing during the COVID-19 pandemic, is something that's kitschy. It's something that people can argue. And if you look at if you watch the news, there's still states that are not enforcing social distancing. So you can argue that, and you can substantiate that with facts and statistics. You could look into Italy and say that, well, since social distancing is happening, they've been flattening the curve. Since China's done this, the economy is opened back up because of social distancing measures. So once you have a research question, then you can flip that into a statement. And then think about it like this. You could say something to the effect of, Americans should employ social distancing measures during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is something that you can argue. You've come up with a central claim. It's as simple as me saying, people, stay in the house. And then people say to me, well, why should I stay in the house? And then I give people a laundry list of reasons why they should stay in the house. So you back it up with facts. If you're doing a literary analysis of sorts, then you're going to pull text. Can't spell. Whatever. We're going to get this. Can't get quotes. And then examples. And when you come up with this thesis statement and you give up the facts and statistics, you pull text and direct quotes, and you have examples, I call this backing that thing up. That's supporting your argument. If I were having an argument with my younger brother about who the greatest basketball player of all time is, I might say Kobe Bryant is the best basketball player of all time. Well, there's nothing empirical, there's nothing cut and dry that substantiates. I don't think I was recording. Was I recording? No, I was. I might edit that one out. If I'm having an argument with my brother and I say that Kobe Bryant is the greatest basketball player of all time, there's nothing empirical to support that. If I say that potatoes are the best food, that's an opinion, but I could go ahead and I can make a sophisticated argument why Kobe Bryant is the best basketball player of all time, because I will give facts, statistics, and I won't give too much opinion. I will give facts to support my claim. Same would apply to potatoes. Like, potatoes are the greatest food of all time. No one can empirically argue that, but I could give you facts and statistics. I can support my claim. The same would apply when you're coming with a thesis in literary studies or journalism or creative writing, that all these translate to writing. And when you're doing writing in your other classes, which is the intention of this project, is that you take these skills and they transfer to your other classes. So if you're taking English 448 and you write a theory paper, you have a much clearer idea on how to do that. The same would apply in American literature classes, British literature classes. You're coming up with a central claim and you're backing it up with a thesis. So let me pause this for a moment.